So Kirby Smart has just been dropping little tidbits here and there the last few weeks during, all of the spring practice press conferences about recruiting, and he's getting asked about recruiting a lot. And look, he's not really shy about talking about it. He's not bashful. He straight up tells people in these press conferences. He'll tell you if you ask why they're so good at it, why the Georgia Bulldogs are recruiting pretty much better than anybody else. I mean, every single year, if you just go through it, Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs are bringing in a top 5 class to Athens. And I think that there are a ton of reasons why Georgia wins national championships and is competing for national championships year in and year out right now. But it starts with, obviously having the infrastructure and a coach like Kirby Smart. But what he does on the recruiting trail, bringing in that top end talent, right? Having that top end talent helps you win championships, right? Because other programs just don't have as many 5 stars and 4 stars as Georgia. But it is also a little bit more than that. And he discussed that as well. He kind of gave his take on recruiting the 4 and the 5 stars and how you have to do that. And that it's also not just about that. Because if you go through the last few years for Georgia and you look at who some of the key contributors are, not all of them were just bona fide studs as recruits. Not all of them were the Keely Ringos of the world that came in as top 5 prospects overall in their class and were projected to be future first rounders. Keely didn't end up being that, but he ended up making a few first round plays for Georgia during his career, so obviously an impact player. But he said something about KJ Bolden I want to talk about a little bit last week, and I think Dawg Post, we were pretty closely following the KJ Bolden recruitment. The amount of times that we were at Buford with all the Dylan Raiola drama and him coming to Buford and doing that, and KJ Bolden's recruitment also kind of being a dramatic one side by side, and they are at the same school. So we'll start off by talking about that real quick. Ryan Curley from Dawg Post talking about recruiting and why Kirby Smart is doing it so well. He tells us, right? It's not a secret. What else is not a secret, and I botched that up, is how great the Dawg Post newsletter can be. Make sure you're checking out that link in the description of this video down below. It just takes a couple of seconds to get signed up, and I appreciate those who already are. We're trying to build that, right? It's a notification. It's a message in your inbox, right? You don't have to go looking for your Georgia Bulldogs content. We'll deliver that to you on the website. In addition, because I know not everybody that watches this is also checking out the website, but there's exclusive content over there, right? I can't say every little thing on here, so there's more exclusive stuff over there. Make sure you're checking that out. Make sure you just check out dogpost.com in general. Shout out to EcoPoly. I got their merch on right now. They've got these comfy shirts, and I appreciate them. So I like to rep the brand when I'm walking around Athens. Let's look at what Kirby said the other day, and then this was about a week ago when he said this. Talking about the KJ Bolden recruitment, and I'll give a quick recap. Georgia guy, Buford player, plays wide receiver, plays safety. He's a 5-star in this past class, in the current 2024 class, right? He's an early enrollee, so he's already on campus right now. And Georgia was one of his top places for a long time. Florida State was thought to be his dream school. It seemed like Georgia. Everybody was saying this guy's going to Georgia. All of a sudden he goes to Florida State. Right, and there's, maybe that's because of the money involved in that. And Kirby was relentless, and they kept going after him. And eventually KJ Bolden announces, around signing day that he is going to go to Georgia and not Florida State. So a guy that was committed to another school for a long time. I mean, it would have been a few months, right? So not an extremely long time. They went and they flipped him. And so the 4 and the 5 stars and the flipping, that is one part of it. So let's talk about that part first. Excuse me. This is what he said about KJ Bolden. Their first spring players, their talent, blah, blah, blah. They're instinctive. Basically, man, they get these quotes wrong all the time. Here we go. As far as KJ's recruitment, I don't see kids as committed to other places because they're not. They're not signed. I just know we recruit good football players. We evaluate every player the same, whether they're committed or not. If there's interest and conversation from them and there's visits where they come to your campus, you just stay very consistent. We were consistent with KJ. the recruitment never stopped. And I told him from the day he committed to the day he came to us that we're not going to stop recruiting him because we think he's a great kid from a great family and a really, really good football player. He and Ellis have a chance to make us much better. Talking about Ellis Robinson as well, another 5-star defensive back that they got. Right, obviously KJ played wide receiver as well, but he will be playing defense for the Georgia Bulldogs. So there's a couple things in there, right? As far as KJ's recruitment, I don't see kids as committed to other places because they're not. What do we see over and over in college football? So Justice Terry, he's a 5-star defensive player in the next recruitment cycle, this next 2025 cycle, committed to Georgia for the last little bit of time. Right now he just flipped. It also happens to Georgia. And there's kind of a two-parter for why the flipping can also be okay, and something Kirby discussed a little bit later on as well. It's true, right? And especially in this day and age, I think people are starting to change their minds a little bit more. People are going from place to place. We see kids changing from high school over and over. And Kirby doesn't necessarily like that because the two-parter to that is if a 5-star is the type of diva that they can't handle, right? Because I think that Georgia's had some divas on his teams. But if it's the type of personality that doesn't fit in at Georgia or Kirby and the staff just can't handle, they don't want them at Georgia, right? They don't even want you there. That's kind of how that works. It's just being honest. With KJ, they were relentless, right? He was committed to Florida State all that time, but he was still taking visits to Athens, right? We saw him at a couple of games this past season, and it worked, right? And he ends up kind of going back to what everyone originally thought he was going to do. The same thing happened, right? Because Justice Terry, he just flipped from Georgia over there to USC. You know, what does that have to do with? You know, if you're a defensive player, I think it makes a lot more sense to go to a Georgia than to a USC. All right, now we've seen multiple guys flip to that. Is money part of the reason? I'm not trying to speculate too much, but that's kind of how that works. And at the end of the day, Kirby and his staff, they just don't want players who care that much about NIL. They don't want that to be their priority. This is something else that he said in terms of that. I'll bring it up real quick. This was something that was discussed even more recently in terms of his recruiting. But basically, they just don't want NIL to be like the top priority. They asked some of these kids to rank their priorities 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If NIL is up there a little too high, that can be a little bit of a red flag for the Georgia Bulldogs. But that's how they recruit 4 and 5 stars a little bit. It's the other part of it that separates them even more. Because Alabama is also recruiting the 4 and 5 stars. So is Ohio State, Oregon, all these programs. And these other programs also have their examples of what I'm about to talk about as well. But it feels like Georgia, it's happening a little bit more often. The 3 stars, the guys that aren't ranked as high, the stones that they don't leave unturned. Georgia is going after those players. They are searching far and wide. The recruiters don't care about the stars. They watch all the tape, and they make the decisions and the rankings for themselves, which is how a good recruiter should do it, and a good program should run it that way, and not just value it based off of what experts think because of what happens at the camps. The rankings are not totally accurate. They're pretty good. They get a lot of things right, but it's not perfect. You find guys like Christopher Smith, 3-star from around the Atlanta area, right? Really good high school football player. They get to Georgia, he gets opportunities, and he ends up being a super impactful player for not one, but 2 national championship teams, right? He made impact plays in both of those seasons. Another safety that was after him, Javon Bullard, and played with him a little bit. Javon Bullard, 3-star, Millersville, Georgia. They went and found that guy, and he was a starter in year 2 at Georgia, right? And got snaps, not minutes. That's basketball. Got snaps in year 1 at Georgia. They're going to find these guys. Lat McConkey, Northwest Georgia. They went and found him. Dejan Edwards, right? He wasn't he was a 4-star running back, but this was a South Georgia running back that wasn't this super high prospect. They made sure that they get guys like that because they know that they can contribute to winning football, partially because of how much they want and how much they want to work for it, and that edge can also help out a player. So Kirby, he talks about it over and over. He's not shy about it, and he tells you why he's better at recruiting than you. Thanks for watching.